All right, so we're recording now. So everybody, welcome tonight. And our guest speaker is Lauren Spear from the Orange Butterfly. So Lauren is a trained special education teacher working with students with multiple disabilities across schools in South Australia. In 2018, Lauren was involved in a workplace accident and has been living with a traumatic brain injury for the last 3 years. She now dedicates her time sharing her story, offering support, education, and advocating with the wider concussion and brain injury community through her personal blog and organization called the Orange Butterfly, committing herself to closing the often misunderstood gap between brain injury community and the wider community. All right, Lauren.
Cool. Thank you so much for having me, everybody. I'd love to get to know you all or introduce you to each other and to myself maybe a bit later. But like Claire said, please, if you have any questions while I'm talking, stop me, write them in the chat. I can see them on my screen. So I'm happy to answer anything as well. And if there's something particular that you want me to talk about as well, please let me know. I've done a few chats and podcast episodes in the past, and I'm very go with the flow with my story. So I don't have a set presentation or notes to share with you guys here today. So yeah, if there's anything that you want to throw at me, please do, and I'll happily answer as best I can. But basically, I'll start at the beginning of my story, and we'll just go from there. But I'm turning 29 this year, so I was 25, almost 26 when I had my accident. And my life pre-injury, Lauren, I was very busy. I was very chaotic. I was the type of person that didn't really like to stay at home and do nothing for long periods of time. So I kept myself busy. I was a massive dancer. So I was a ballet dancer and an Irish dancer. So dancing had been a part of my life since I was 4. So it was a big part of who I was and who I identified myself with. I studied at a university here, and I did a double degree in early childhood education and disability studies. And while I was studying, I knew that I really wanted to work in the disability and special education field here in Adelaide. I'd worked in a few mainstream school settings across my state, and I really enjoyed the disability community side of my work a lot more. So I knew once I graduated, I really wanted to find a job in that field. And 6 months after I graduated, I was very lucky, and I found a permanent position at an autism specific school here. It was actually the first autism specific school here in South Australia that I was able to be a part of. So it was incredibly rewarding, and I loved every part of my job, every second of it. It was, I couldn't have asked for at that particular time in my life anything more. I was very content with my job. I thought I'd found, the thing that I was supposed to do with my life, and it made me very happy. I worked with a lot of different age groups at school. We had small class sizes, which was really good because we really got to tailor the curriculum and my school day according to the needs of all of my kids, which was very rewarding. Can be challenging at times, but with the right support system, and we had lovely parents and families, it got us through, and it made coming to work every day that bit more important and special for me. The year of my accident, it was 2018, and I had I'm not sure if you call the first year of school reception, but we do here in Australia or in South Australia. So I had 5-year-olds. I had a class of 6 boys who had never been to school before, all with autism and a few other additional support needs as well. It was a great class. A couple of my boys were non-verbal, so we used alternative communication. So it made my day, and every single day for that matter, very different. So I never knew what we were going to expect or what was going to happen throughout the day. On this particular day, one of my young boys really enjoyed climbing, and we were out during one of their lunchtime play times, and I was on my yard duty watching everybody. Now one of the young boys was stuck on top of a big we have a big climbing dome frame that you got, like, boys and girls can climb and sit at the top and then come down, whenever they want. And this particular boy really loved to climb, but he never really knew how to get himself down when he reached to the top. So he always needed a little bit of support, and usually it was just me telling him where he needed to put his feet. I never had to climb up to the top and pick him down. So it was, he was safe. And on this particular occasion, I couldn't even tell you why, but I decided to climb up just a couple of rails this time just to get myself closer to him. And I still really can't give you an answer as to why I did that, but I did, and helped him navigate where to put his feet. And he got himself down to my level, no problem. And when he reached down to me, he decided to turn around and let go and jump the rest of the way. But when he jumped, he had hold of my top, and I wasn't expecting it. And I just simply lost my balance and fell backwards and hit my head on a big metal pole on the way down to the ground when he jumped. And that was basically it. And I tell that story like it went on for hours, but I think it was like in the space of 5 minutes. And he was fine. He was completely fine. He got up and off he ran to the next piece of play equipment, but I was still on the ground. And unfortunately, no other staff member actually witnessed my fall. So I don't think I lost consciousness, but I may have been remembering wrong, and if I did, it might have only been for a few seconds. But I noticed my eyes straight away. Everything kind of went blurry. It was difficult to focus. So I laid on the ground for a little while. And when I thought I'd gathered myself and I was okay to get up, I did. And even then, I think I didn't understand what had happened. So I was more embarrassed at the fact that I just fell off a piece of playground equipment that my kids play on every single day. So I really did just want to get up and dust myself off and go back to my job. But that definitely wasn't going to happen. My eyes didn't get any better. I started having shooting pain down my neck and my spine, and I had these grazes. I had cuts on my wrists here, and I remember, and it must have been shock, but I remember thinking that I'd broken my wrists and I needed to get ice for these cuts. So I got myself up and went into the staff room and didn't tell anybody about my head. I just said that I needed ice for my wrists. And then I think they slowly started to put the pieces together and realized that I had hit my head and needed to go to hospital. And so I left school and went to hospital with mum and dad. And a few hours later, after some tests and some x-rays, they diagnosed me with quite a severe concussion, told me to go home, report to my general practitioner doctor the next day, and I'd be back at work the next week. And I was like, okay, cool. And I did. And the next day I went to my doctor and told him what happened. And in my head, I knew I wasn't right, but I also had that statement that the hospital doctor said to me that I'd be back at work the next week, and that's all I wanted. So I don't think I took, sometimes I say I don't think I took my symptoms or my injuries seriously, but I don't think that's the case. I think it was, I didn't really know what I was in for. And my job and my work at that moment meant everything to me. So I was going to do whatever I could to get myself back to work on that Monday morning. And so that Friday before the Monday came, and I went back to the doctor and said, you need to clear me. And he said, you're not going to go, you're not going to get through your day. And I said, don't be silly, I'm going to get through my day. And he cleared me for 2 hours. And I remember being so angry at him because I was like, I'm a teacher. I can't go into my classroom for 2 hours. I need to be there. and he cleared me for 2 hours, and I took it grumpily, and I went there on the Monday, and I lasted 45 minutes, I think, if that, in the classroom. And that's when I went home and realized that I was in for a longer road, and it was going to be a lot harder than what I initially thought it would be. But it didn't stop me. I think I went for 45 minutes every day, and I was like, don't worry, I'll get there. Um, you know, I had hurdles along the way. I changed from going in the mornings to going in the afternoons, to going into a different classroom, to taking myself out of a classroom altogether, just to try and find a way that I could successfully return to my job, and nothing was working. I mean, mind you, being in an environment where it's incredibly loud, it's incredibly unpredictable at times with some of the students that you work with. Behaviors can be quite stressful. It's probably not the right environment for someone going through a head trauma and recovery to be a part of. But in my head, I kind of put it to one side, and my sole goal in life was to get myself back to teaching. And as I say this, I look back and I'm like, I can't believe it, because some of the symptoms and injuries I was living with, I was like, I don't even know how I was getting out of bed in the morning. But the first couple of weeks, I wasn't back at school, or maybe it was just a week. I can't even remember now. But I couldn't even open my eyes or get out of bed for more than 10 minutes to go to the bathroom, because of that incredibly debilitating fatigue that you get. I noticed I couldn't watch TV. I started to notice a connection between using my phone and TV, or watching people walk in and out of my room, or just that motion, with nausea. It made me feel incredibly nauseous. I had really bad whiplash, and I still have difficulty with a neck injury now. Lately, I've developed a sleep disorder, which apparently is quite common after a concussion. And you go in waves with your mental health, and especially during those times where you can't do anything. I mean, my injury took and stripped away everything that you identify yourself with. I could no longer dance, and I was dancing up until the day of my accident. I couldn't go back to school no matter how hard I tried, and I tried for the first year of my recovery to get back to school, until I realized that it just wasn't going to work for now, and I needed to take that step back and put my health and my recovery as the number one priority. And I wasn't doing that until a year later. I was doing all my rehab, but my number one priority was work, and I needed to completely flip that. And once I did that, I think I started to notice my mental health change dramatically. You still have bad days, but I don't even think I realized that going to school, where my accident happened every single day, how much that was affecting me. And so once I took that step back, it was like I took this big giant breath, and I started to feel a lot better. My rehab over the last few years has been a mixture of things. I was very fortunate that my general practitioner doctor noticed the signs straight away, and unfortunately, I know there's lots of people that I've come across during my talks and on Instagram that say that they haven't had any recovery or gone to see a doctor for years after their concussion. And I was very fortunate that it happened quite instantaneously for me. A couple of months after my accident, I started working with an eye specialist because of all the issues that I was having with my eyes. I started working with, we call them a neurophysiotherapist here. I'm not sure what they're called, if they're called the exact same thing over there. But she did a lot of activities, a lot of exercises with me to try and get my heart rate and my body kind of back in sync, because I went from dancing almost every night to not being able to walk for a couple of minutes on a treadmill, just because my heart rate was completely off the charts, and my symptoms would just go bananas. So she worked with me through a lot of that kind of stuff. She worked on my neck, and she's basically a god, that lady. So I owe a lot of my rehab to my neurophysiotherapist here. we have what's called Hampstead Rehabilitation Centre here in Adelaide, where as part of the rehab centre, there's a brain injury rehab unit there where you can stay as an inpatient or you can become an outpatient. And I became like fortunate enough, I was able to stay at home, but I became an outpatient at Hampstead Rehab Centre, where one of the specialists there became the head lady in my hierarchy of doctors and rehab. So she kind of controlled everything for me, which I'm very grateful for, because at times, especially when you're going through something like this, I wasn't thinking clearly. People were telling me all different things. It was nice to have someone at the top who I could just go to, and she was well aware of what was going on. So she was incredibly helpful. I also saw an occupational therapist at the beginning of my recovery, and she did a lot of activities to simulate a classroom environment for me, where it was loud and I had to think on my feet a little bit more and problem solve. And I remember if I had an appointment with her, I knew I couldn't do anything else that day because she just took everything out of me. It was very hard work. I did that for a good 6 or 8 months, and it stopped quite abruptly. I wish I'd continued, or wish I'd get back into it now, but she did help me a lot before I took that big step back from school. But yeah, I hope I'm not forgetting anyone in my rehab team. I always do. But they're the general big ones that are still part of my recovery today. And I'm going into my 3rd year now. So it's been a massive ride and a massive journey so far, but I am starting to notice, especially once I hit that 2-year mark, starting to notice some improvements made along the way. I don't think I saw them in that first year or even year and a half. It was only the last year where I've started to go, oh, I could do this now, and I couldn't do that a year ago, or I lasted a lot longer than what I would have 6 months ago. And it was just having those little moments of positivity amongst a lot of darkness has been really good to witness in myself over the last few months. But yeah, that's basically the background of my story without getting into my blog yet. And I'm happy to keep talking, but if anybody does have any questions so far, please let me know, or would you like me to just keep talking? Keep talking? All right. The first year of my recovery is a bit of a blur, but I remember my neurophysio telling me that she really wanted me to journal and write down in my diary after every session and every night before I went to bed, how I was feeling and how I was going, even if it was just 3 words. It didn't need to be a paragraph, but just something about the day that made me feel good or made me feel bad or anything. And I did that, and it was quite cathartic. It was really, I really enjoyed before going to sleep at night just to think about my day and put down a couple of words on a page before I closed my eyes and went to sleep. And I did that for a few months. And as I kept going, I started to write sentences and a couple of paragraphs if I felt like it. And I've always enjoyed writing. So it was quite nice to get back into that side of me when I felt like I was able to. And I remember the biggest part of that first year, and even so now, was struggling with people not understanding what I was going through. And I think it was purely because I looked the same. But there was not one part of me at that point in my recovery that was the same. Well, I didn't feel like Lauren at all. I remember telling people, and I think I spoke about this at the beginning of my blog, where I felt like a shell of a person walking around, or like a zombie, or like I'd tried to put myself back together again, or, put myself back as a puzzle, but there was missing pieces of that puzzle and I couldn't find them. And that's what I felt like. And the only way I could describe it was to tell it like that. Imagining putting puzzle pieces together where you don't know what the pictures looks like and you've got missing pieces. It's almost impossible sometimes. And that's what it felt like. And it was really frustrating when people didn't understand what I was going through. So I used my words, and I decided to type it up just a little bit better in a form of a story or an article, I guess, to share with my parents and my close friends, hoping that it might help and get their opinion. And once they read it, it they said it made a massive difference to them. And I really saw a turning point. I didn't have to try and explain every single part of my day or how I was feeling all the time to them. Of course, you don't understand everything a person goes through, and I never expected that. But I just wanted to give people, especially my family, that little bit of insight into how I was feeling on the inside. And writing up a little story about what I had gone through so far really helped. And then I decided to share it with some more friends and some more. And then I was really encouraged to put it on a website. And I thought, well, yeah, I mean, if it was going to help, if it was helping my friends and my family this much, imagine what it could do for other people. So one of my best friends helped me produce my website. I wrote 4 short blog entries about my story so far and put it on a website and created an Instagram page and just got it out there. And the response at the beginning and even now was incredibly overwhelming. I had messages from people all over the world telling me that they had struggled for so long to find the words to describe what they were going through or to put their feelings or emotions to words. And they said, reading my words and my story and what I had written, they said they didn't need to anymore because I did it for them. And they said that, if anybody in my life needed to know or wanted to ask what I was going through, they said that they'd just point them in the direction of my blog, because it helped them so much. And that was very, very, very important to me. And it was exactly what I wanted to do. And to get that response initially it was amazing. And it's just kind of grown from there. I started to add more blog entries to my website. I started to post regularly on my Instagram, and I created a Facebook page as well. And just recently, one of my friends I met through the brain injury community here in South Australia, we turned my little orange butterfly page on Facebook into a closed private community where people after concussion or head injury might want to join, as well as people from the wider community who may not have an injury but want to learn and want to be a part of the group and learn from each other. So we've got, I think it's about 140 members in the private Facebook community at the moment, and that's people with a head injury as well as people not with a head injury. And we share posts, we share ideas, we share activities people might be interested in, and it's just a way of sharing thoughts and sharing information that might be beneficial to everybody. And that's been really good. I really like being a part of that as well. So yeah, my blog in a way has almost given me back that sense of purpose. For a long time I lost the love that I had for teaching, and even saying this now, I'm not sure if I'd ever go back to teaching the way that I once was. And it can be heartbreaking at times, because going from that person who said at the beginning I'd found what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, and then at 26 years old and now 29 saying that, oh, it's not what I want to do for the rest of my life now, it's just completely gone. It can be upsetting at times, but I feel like my blog and talking on podcasts or panels or my Instagram page, whatever it may be, I feel like I am teaching in a way. I'm still using my knowledge. I'm still using the skills that I once had. It's just in a different way, and maybe even in a more powerful way to me now than I ever thought. So I am starting to put back those pieces, or find those missing puzzle pieces, as I said, of my life. And it's been a long road, and I've probably only started to put those pieces back together over the last 6 months. And it makes me excited for the future now, which is really good. Something that I hadn't hadn't been excited for in a long time, because the future can be quite, well, it's still very unknown, but I know that no matter what, I can continue writing and continue sharing and spreading that awareness and education or helping people. And that's, that's my basis, that's my starting point, and I'll just go from there. But there is a question here. How have your relationships changed through your concussion recovery? My relationships have, oh, I think going through something life-changing like this makes you aware of who is truly there for you and who isn't. And I think my friendship circle has definitely gotten smaller, but in saying that, it's the quality of that friendship circle is probably bigger than what it was previously. So I considered a lot of people that I worked with my close friends, and once I said that I couldn't do it anymore, I needed to take a step back, they dropped off the face of the earth. So, it's just finding people that are going to be there for you when shit hits the fan, or are they not? And I've been lucky. I've still got some really close friends that have been a part of my life for a while now. And some of them, one in particular, I remember at the beginning, especially, where it was all very new and even I couldn't explain things to her properly. So if I told her something and she didn't know what it was, she'd Google it. So the next time, or she'd message me the next time when I saw her, we could talk about it, or she'd have a little bit of an idea about what I was trying to explain. And that, just something like that took her 5 minutes. Something like that would, mean the world to me. But with some people, it's a lot to ask. So I think it was just, yes, they have changed, but looking back on it now, it's probably changed for the better. I live at home at the moment, so mum and dad have been a big support. So my relationships with my family haven't changed. I have a boyfriend, and my relationship with him, we were together before my accident. And I mean, he's known me since we were 16. So he's known me for a long time. And I think that was probably in a way hard, because he knew who I was. And then all of a sudden, in a matter of a day, I wasn't that person anymore. So yeah, I'd be lying if I said that relationship hadn't changed. But we overcame a lot of those obstacles together. And now that I'm starting to find myself again, and he's starting to work out how to best support me, because it's a learning curve, not just for the person that's going through it, it's a learning curve for everybody around that person. So I think when he started to make sure he was learning and he was educating himself, and I was learning and starting to put my rehab first, things got a lot better for us. So yes, I have lost people, but maybe they were worth losing. Never know. But yeah, that's basically how my blog and my website started. I hope I have a lot of plans for it in the future. Hopefully this year, I'd love to get it started. I'd love to turn the Orange Butterfly and blog into a non-for-profit organization where I could raise money and for brain injury of South Australia here that I've been a part of, host support groups or walking groups, or do a lot more mentoring. I'd really like to take that to the next level and be that person, be that person in the community that people can turn to if they need help or needed advice or just someone to talk to. And I'd love to do that, as well as, raising money for a much needed cause as well. So they're my future plans. That's what I'm doing at the moment. And yeah, that's basically Lauren. Thank you for listening. But please, if you have anything you want me to elaborate on, because I tell my story all the time and then I hang up and I go, oh my God, I could have said 10 more things and I've totally forgotten. So I'm sorry if I've forgotten anything, but yeah, let me know if you have any questions or want me to elaborate on anything further.
That's great. Thank you so much, Lauren. I'm just going to stop the recording now. And if anybody has questions, please feel free to write them in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and ask away.